This is Denmark, a small country of 5 million people. Yet it is an economic powerhouse, with a GDP per capita higher than Germany, Netherlands and the UK. It is one of the richest countries in the world, but remarkably, unlike say Norway, it has no particular natural resources like oil. Also, it has achieved this high level of wealth despite having one of the highest tax burdens in the world. What is the secret to Denmark's success? And how much can other countries learn from this country which lays claim to be the second most happy country in the world? Well, firstly, Denmark wasn't always a high tax country. In 1965, taxes as a share of GDP were just 29%, only slightly higher than the US. But in the late 1960s, Denmark embraced a much more universal welfare state. Education, childcare, welfare benefits and healthcare all are provided free at the point of use. They are paid for by a consumption tax of 25% and an income tax rate of up to 56%, leaving Denmark with the highest tax burden in the OECD. But here's a remarkable thing. There's a widespread acceptance of this high tax regime. According to a Gallup poll, 88% of Danes are happy to pay their taxes. Danish people simply see taxes as a good investment. Public services work, and a Danish taxpayer can save thousands of euros compared to, say, an American or British person who may have to pay for university tuition fees, childcare, private health or high train fares. Free market economists like to warn that high tax will destroy incentives to work, but this simply doesn't apply to Denmark. Since the 1960s, when taxes rose, the Danish economy has continued to grow, outstripping many other advanced economies. It would be a mistake to say that high taxes caused high GDP. Denmark was doing well even before the extension of taxes. But also it would be a mistake to claim that high taxes damage the economy. In fact, Denmark is an example of how a strong welfare state can strengthen the workings of a free market. Free childcare provision has enabled a growth in female participation rates. Free education has led to one of the best educated workforces, vital in the service sector-based economy. Leaving university without debt encourages young people to take more risk, setting up new business. Benefits are generous, but unemployment is impressively low. And this high government spending has been achieved with impressively low levels of government debt, again one of the best performers in the developed world. The support for high taxes also reflects the relatively strong sense of social cohesion which exists not just in Denmark but throughout Scandinavia. From the mid-19th century, Denmark was able to cultivate a sense of progressive nationalism, education which promoted a sense of moral responsibility and social cohesion. In an international measure of corruption, Denmark ranks number 1 as the least corrupt, reflecting a strong sense of trust in institutions, politics and the legal system. And this is why many multinationals are willing to invest in Denmark, despite relatively high taxes. This civic cohesion and trust is also helped by unsurprisingly very low levels of inequality, again one of the lowest in the world. By contrast, the United States inequality is around 40% higher. There is an egalitarian spirit with an emphasis on equality of opportunity. But it would be a mistake to say Denmark is a socialist economy, because outside the extensive welfare state, the economy is based on free market and a limited role for the government. The World Bank's Ease of Business Index ranks Denmark 4th in the world, a reflection of the relatively low cost of setting up a business and hiring workers. The business-friendly environment has given us many successful multinationals from Denmark, such as Lego, the iconic toy company, Maersk, the largest global shipping company in the world, and other famous brands such as Carlsberg, Lurpak butter, and don't forget Danish bacon. It's also strong in banking and a leading pharmaceutical producer, with Novo Nordisk, the first company to commercialise the treatment of diabetes. It also has the patent for Ozempic, the new so-called miracle weight loss drug. In fact, a glance at the top performing Danish companies shows an economy punching above its weight, and there's an admirable diversification from manufacturing to services to agriculture, a benefit perhaps of not having an economy dominated by natural resources. It certainly escaped the Dutch disease of its near neighbour. Despite not being resource rich, Denmark is an impressive exporter. It has a current account surplus of 10% of GDP, a reflection of its strong export base. When understanding the success of Denmark, it's also important to place it into geographical perspective. It is surrounded by high-income, stable economies, which definitely makes it easier to succeed. Now, the Danish economy is sometimes held up as a model from everybody from socialists to anarcho-capitalists. And this is a mistake, because perhaps Denmark's secret is to not be overwhelmed by ideology, but rather take a more pragmatic approach. Business have economic freedoms, but also benefit from state intervention in public goods, from magnificent bridges to education. And a key aspect of this pragmatic approach is through industrial relations. Unions have a significant role to play, not as an antagonistic foil, but more partner. Days lost to strikes is low, unemployment is low, and real wages are high. With strong unions, there is no need to even have a national minimum wage. Now, a fair point about Denmark is that it is an expensive place to live. Certainly if you go as a tourist, you can be surprised by the high prices. Hardly surprising given a 25% consumption tax. But even accounting for the cost of living, actual consumption levels rank amongst the highest in Europe. Prices are high, but average wages compensate, and housing isn't too bad either. On economics, Denmark definitely scores well, but it is a mistake to judge only by things like GDP per capita. What really counts is the quality of life. And despite high incomes, Denmark has one of the lowest levels of hours worked per year. There is a good work-life balance, which explains why Denmark ranks highly on Happiness Index. Denmark has also been successful in creating livable cities, with one of the highest rates of cycling in the world. Nearly 50% of commuting trips in Copenhagen are by bike, and this reflects a willingness to invest in cycle infrastructure, which is hard to imagine in other countries like the United States. However, having said all that, it's always a mistake to take too much of a rose-tinted view of a Danish economy. It does have its own problems. In recent years, there have been increased tensions over newly arrived migrants. Since 1980, the Danish-born population has stayed constant at around 5 million. The growth in the population to 5.8 million is almost entirely due to net migration. In 2018, the government produced a report that stated non-European migrants tend to be a net drain on finances. Given Denmark's generous welfare state, there has been something of a backlash, with welfare payments becoming much less generous for newly arrived immigrants. The government is also controversially set on demolishing buildings characterised by high levels of ethnic segregation. Like other European countries, tensions remain high on this issue. Tensions which were exacerbated by the recent economic difficulties of high inflation and low economic growth. So, should other countries emulate Denmark and increase taxes and enable a more extensive welfare state? Well, higher taxes isn't necessarily a magic wand. There needs to be also good quality of government. It needs to be more than just spending money, but making sure that money is accountable and linked to productivity. If you compare productivity between Danish and UK healthcare, Denmark scores higher because it embraced a more comprehensive digitalisation of the system than the UK. But Denmark does definitely show it is possible to combine the best of both worlds: government provision of public goods and the welfare state, which aid the dynamism of the private sector, which helps create the wealth. Denmark's economy does raise an interesting question. Which is the best economic model? Europe or the United States? This video looks at this interesting question.